What turned my life around really was the realization that I couldn't live like that anymore.
If I never take a drug, then I never have a problem with a drug. I can't have a drug habit if I never use the first use.
If I had my life over again, I would not touch anything at all. Any drug, alcohol, no way.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Delgado Institute. My name's Shane Varco, and I'm going to be sharing with you on a topic tonight that's dear to our heart and something we've been working on for quite some time. Tonight's topic is going to be actually called prevention, time for culture shift. We've had approximately 30 years of a harm minimisation framework, which importantly includes demand reduction and prevention as some of its key aspects, but they've actually been lost on the way. And prevention and demand reduction as a result of a misemphasis in that harm minimisation platform has been lost. It has been lost to not only the community, but more importantly to those affected most by drug use, which is the drug user and their families. And we believe it's time that prevention was back on the table aggressively and fully fledged. So tonight's going to be a little bit about that. I want to start tonight by looking at an old nursery rhyme, what we call the Humpty Dumpty dilemma. Now, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. I want you to hear that. All the king's horses and all the king's men could not fix him. It's a very, very powerful little nursery rhyme. I think it's got some really profound applications for us tonight. Government endeavours, arguably sincere, are not fixing the problem. Now, this problem, particularly the ice epidemic, cannabis issues that are rising, has created some real problems in governments. And I know I've been involved in a number of different forums and presented to some government officials on this, on the ice topic particularly. And they're flummoxed. They're not sure what to do, where to go. So they are looking at this. Governments are really trying to work hard to figure out what to do with this, but they're not actually fixing the problem. So where do kings go? Where do kings go? Now, a couple of questions I like to ask from that particular nursery rhyme I think are really, really important questions. I like to visit them bit by bit. First one, how did Humpty Dumpty become so fragile? We're talking about this postmodern generation, arguably one of the healthiest, most certainly technologically advanced, scientifically advanced, knowledge-based generations that's ever lived on the planet. Yet, at the same time, particularly in the First World West, it's incredibly fragile. So how did Humpty Dumpty become so fragile? Why, second question, why is a fragile individual in such a precarious place? Third question, what made him or her fall? Or more importantly, who pushed? So, again, precarious place, they've fallen, why? Who pushed? What's going on with that? Of course, why can't all the king's men put him back together again? That's a question that a lot of governments don't want to answer because they're trying to figure out answers in a vacuum often. And finally, to where do kings go to find help for this dilemma? So they're just some of the philosophical questions that we're sort of going to broach tonight through some of the data we're going to be looking at as we go through some of the evidence that's available to us. To start with, I want to make a statement. When I go into schools and I speak extensively to young people in high schools and sometimes primary schools, we always start seminars around this issue of context. And I say to kids, and I say to you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, context is everything. Sure, what you do is important, where you do it, who you do it with, how, all important things, absolutely no argument. But the key thing, the most important thing in all of this is why. Is why we do what we do. Context is everything. If you don't have a sustainable context, a sustainable why, because that you can defend, you're fodder for the system. I say to the kids, if you've got no sustainable why, you are fodder for the system. You're one of the most easy persons to manipulate, to take advantage of. We can't ignore why. And tonight's going to be a little bit, well, quite extensively about this why issue. Because all we keep doing, if we don't deal with the why, if we don't go to some of the key issues, the foundational issues of this, all we're going to continue to do is work with the symptoms of alcohol and other drug use and abuse, trying to manage those symptoms rather than dealing with the origins, the causes, and the recovery processes needed to get people away from that.
When I was about 12, I started smoking marijuana. By the time I was like 14, 15, I was using amphetamines and ice and ecstasy. And 17, 18, I was on heroin.
The second drug I tried was heroin, and I liked that straight away.
I learned from a young age to not speak out hurt and just bottle it in.
I got involved with prostitution to afford my habit.
People did used to tell me that it's harmless, that it won't hurt just a little bit. Try it.
My life revolved around drugs. I wouldn't go to school unless I could get drugs. I wouldn't go see my family unless I could get drugs. That's all my life entailed, getting high.
To be quite honest, it did take away the hurt, but it didn't take away the problems.
It was controlling me.
It had control of me.
You know, at 18, they were getting on with their lives, going to university, working full time, and I was drinking daily and smoking dope and hating myself.
I just didn't care. I was just, as long as I had money to get my drugs.
I'm telling myself that it won't go on forever.
Let's just be happy. And drugs made me feel happy at the start.
Mum, can you babysit for an hour? I promise I'm only going to be an hour. 2-3 weeks later, I'd come back. I missed my son's first day of school. It was my mum and my sister. You know, that's a pretty big thing.
You know, I tried it with this girlfriend of mine and she smoked dope regularly. I was really sick and I was actually really frightened. I said I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. And I really felt like I was dying.
You're self-medicating for whatever reason.
Pain, hurt, was all just pushed so deep, I just didn't have to feel. I was like a zombie, an emotional zombie, that's what I was.
I started getting paranoid, that just of what people were thinking about me.
You look disgusting. You don't care about yourself. You don't care about the way you look. You don't care about whom you hurt.
It didn't just affect me. I said I have 2 beautiful children and they have been deeply and forever affected because of my drinking and drug taking.
And I remember sitting in there going, I'm going to get heroin tomorrow. Like, I cannot deal with this. I'm going to get heroin.
If you tried it that once, could you tell me what you would do if after that one time of you trying it, you liked it, and then before you know it, I mean, like I said, 5 days, and I was addicted to heroin. 5 days.
There's no real life behind drugs. There's none. And, well, look at me at the moment. And now I'm off drugs, I can talk to you like a normal person. Before, man, I was gone.
I've had 4 miscarriages, all due to drugs.
The emotional problems, they stay there and they fester. It's like sweeping dirt under a mat.
Yeah, just want a normal life.
What turned my life around really was the realization that I couldn't live like that anymore. I just thought I'll do anything to get my life in order.
Yeah, I am in a new space right now and I'm learning the truth about myself and who I am, and replacing all them lies that I've had built into me throughout my past and my life.
And self-worth through my faith, and just a different bunch of people around me has just changed my outlook on what the world could be.
Yeah, find someone they can trust and someone they could talk to and open up, and like a burden shared is a burden halved.
So there's something bigger, stronger, clearer and true. Something, that I hold on to now.
If I had my life over again, I absolutely would not touch anything at all. Any drug, alcohol, no way.
As you've just seen, that's a snapshot of some of the people that we've engaged with and dealt with over the last number of years. And some of their context, a little bit about some of the drivers behind, where they ended up and some of the whys behind that. But there's a couple of questions I'd like to, and I've asked these two questions of scores of audiences over many years. And I want to ask these questions tonight to you as an audience as well. The first question is, who here believes that their children or grandchildren will be better off on drugs? No hands? Nobody's got a hand up? Surprising. Okay, next question, very important question. Second question relates to the first one. So, who here believes that their children or grandchildren will be better off with easier access to drugs? Again, no one. Surprisingly, I've done this, as I said, with scores and scores of audiences, and I've never had a single hand go up yet. Because it just doesn't make sense. Look, intuitively, we all know substance use is dangerous. I mean, no one's going, hey, this is a good thing for us. For all sorts of reasons, people do start this. And even with the legal drug of alcohol, we're seeing growing problems because it is a significant problem in our society because it's socially acceptable and easily available. And so we're seeing a misuse of that, creating all sorts of problems. So we know that these things are creating damage, not only for the individual, but for those around them. So that alone should be enough for a key driver to understand what we need to do to make changes in our culture. Now, I just want to digress a little bit. I don't know if any of you folk here, I'm sure you're aware of the Ice Bucket Challenge. That was a international phenomena. People were getting buckets of ice water thrown on to raise money for Lou Gehrig's syndrome, ALS is the technical name, which I won't go into right now, but what's commonly referred to as Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, this is a shocking, autoimmune disease. It does all sorts of damage to the body and it's horrendous. And there's this massive push globally and this great gimmick, this great, Ice Bucket Challenge to get people to raise money to try and fix this disease. This disease has been around for a long time. It's got ongoing ramifications for all sorts of reasons and people want to get rid of it. And I love the catch cry of ALS Association, create a world without ALS. Great catch cry. Now, we still have ALS, it's still doing damage, it's still creating problems, but the agenda is to get rid of ALS. We want to fix this. We want this to go away. We want this to be a done deal. Sure, we're not winning at the moment. Sure, there's a long way to go, but we're not going to give up because we want a world free of ALS. So, the question I ask for a lot of people here, just to hands up, who actually did the Ice Bucket Challenge? Okay, a few of you did, no worries. Did you actually raise money or just do it so you get on social media and make yourself look good? Yeah, I thought so. Some of you, just about the kudos, I get it. Again, great gimmick, great idea, but the drivers are to create a world without ALS. Good thing, great cause, fantastic cause. So just want to keep that in the background as we move forward because I think that's an important thing. We got a disease that is not yet beaten, that's creating all sorts of grief and pain for families. And we've got a great campaign to remove that. Now, the top 3 illicit trades in the world. First one is illicit drugs. Now, there's some debate about this because they keep moving. The biggest illicit trade in the world. The other 2 are human trafficking and illegal arms. These can all jump up in the queue to various priorities. But I want you to note that the top 2, illicit drugs in our list and human trafficking, are almost inseparable. Almost inseparable. Those illicit drugs are involved in that process, whether it be for sex slavery, for child, kidnapping and movement around. Almost invariably, drugs are involved in domination, medication control, abuse of the trafficked person. Those trades exist. Those trades are operating. They're doing untold damage. Nobody's going, that's okay. We'll keep those things going. We need to stop those. So the question I want to ask, going back to our previous thing about ALS, what would it take to have your community free of drugs? What would it take to have your community free of illicit drugs? It's something we need to actually think about because if we're not thinking about this and looking at it from the viewpoint, if you like, the paradigm of the ALS thing, this is doable. Sure, it looks like it's impossible. Sure, there's a lot of obstacles, but this is doable. What would it take? And if you're thinking about that and you're looking at some of the process and you're starting to investigate it in your world, then you become part of the solution. The answer is simple, but it's not easy. And I want to put that out there today. Look, the answer to this, particularly the illicit drug problem, is actually quite simple. But it's not easy. The difficulty is we try to make simple easy. We try to have one-dimensional solutions that we think are just going to fix it, tick, tick, tick. Or we try and make it really complicated and throw all these, you can't do this, you can't do that, this won't happen. But the reality is it's actually quite simple. But it's about social and familial and political will to do what needs to be done. In essence, from our perspective here at Dalgona, we need to restore the diminishing cultural resilience. Most of the kids, most of the young people that we see are involved, and adults that are involved in drug use, substance use, illicit substance use, and alcohol use, the legal drug, often is a result of a lack of personal resiliency. EQ, if you like, is almost non-existent. Now, it doesn't mean that people are stupid, but again, that the framework to make good, ethical, moral, others-focused choices to resist peer pressure are vanishing in young people. But more importantly, our capacity as a culture to be resilient to the diseases of dysfunction is diminishing, and that needs to be restored. We think it's one of the key issues. So let's look at justice issues. And again, these are very subjective terms that get bandied around by all sorts of people in all sorts of frameworks, and I'm fascinated by that. But the World Health Organization in 2001 posited a statement which has become staple for their understanding and protection of young people, and it says this: young people have a right to grow up in a society where they are protected from the pressures to drink and from the harm done by alcohol or any other drug. Now that's really, really important here. So they're saying that societies and communities should create an environment where children, so under the age of 18, are actually protected. They've got a right to grow up protected from not only the susceptibility to, but exposure to these substances. So that's a right for children. And our culture, our society should be lauding that, promoting that right. But that's not what seems to be happening. Because as soon as we turn 18, we become adults, and then we make these mantras, I get to do what I want, how I want, and basically stuff everybody else. That's kind of the agenda. But we move on. Freedom in and of itself is not what bestows dignity, as freedom can be used to enslave and demean people. Freedom and the choice of what is good is what bestows dignity. Now, we juxtapose these two statements, you get the gist, people. You know, again, as I said before, we become adults, and all of a sudden as adults, we no longer feel like in some of our first world ideologies that we are no longer responsible for our neighbour. We no longer have to care about the well-being of others. I get to do what I want, and we took the term human right in front of any statement I make, and away I go. But we've got clear statements here from health organisations and United Nations as well, just as a matter of fact, that talk about the rights of children and the right for them to be safe and protected and nurtured and be given the resiliency capacity to be able to make smart choices. But if you diminish the resiliency capacity of young, of course the resiliency capacity of the old and of the broader community also diminishes as well. I'm socially responsible. Again, we saw with the ALS campaign, I'm a social responsible person. So what is social responsibility? I just wanted to define that because I think that's one of the other things we need to be really looking at. Justice and responsibility, they go together. Justice claims without responsibility endeavours don't work, because all it becomes about is selfish needs and wants, meeting a felt need the way I choose to meet it, rather than understanding that the ramifications of behaviour go across the entire culture. And we need to be looking out for each other if we are truly social justice focused and socially responsible. So, what is social responsibility? And here's one definition, I think it's a really good one. An active involvement in the alleviation of the consequences of social injustice. Here's a key, the placement and participation of the self directly in service delivery, intervention, support and or assistance to those being disadvantaged, or if you like, those being ripped off. We talked before about the context of the ripped off. We need to set up environments, resilient environments, not so people can, I'm going to take drugs because it's my choice and then you have to look after me because you're socially responsible to do that. No. Just set up environments where young people and emerging adults grow up in a place where they don't need to use substances because they are finding fulfillment and clarity and direction and purpose and meaning in life without stimulants or substance use. Keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, there's some demand drivers in our culture. And these are the ones that we've identified in looking at the evidence, looking at the outcomes, so not just anecdotal data, but certainly empirical data that exists, as well as the shift, the anthropological shift over time, and some of the things that have emerged in the last probably 25, 30 years, particularly under harm minimisation frameworks. Demand drivers in the culture. The first category is psychosocial issues. Things like the way I think, the way I interact with the society, the way society interacts with me, what are my social expectations, issues around mental health, how I see myself, the idea of esteem, where that comes from, resiliency components, and the social expectations. The second driver is paradigm issues, and this is really, really important. Worldview issues, how I see or place myself in the world. Very, very important, because your paradigm, your context, is one of the biggest drivers, both socially and philosophically. How you see the world, how you place yourself in it, and how you function in it are really important. And of course, permission issues. This is one of the emerging biggest driver, I think, we're discovering in culture right now. We're seeing this kind of behaviour, right? Permission, more and more permission messages coming through. So these are the three big demand drivers we believe need to be addressed. If we're going to reduce demand for drug use, if we're going to reduce demand for substance use and misuse, we're going to have to hit these categories. And we're going to try and touch on those this evening as we go through that. To shift culture, we need to address these, and the following three arenas are important to this end. So these are the three big categories, but there are three different arenas that we need to look at to address these issues.